When Ken went to work in the machine shop of PCMC in February 1980, he figured he was set for life. The company, which built machines for the world's biggest tissue suppliers, was considered by everybody in Green Bay to be one of the best places to work. For Ken, it meant a several dollar-an-hour raise from his mechanic's wages. In fact, in his early years with PCMC, Ken remembers that several paychecks would often pile up atop his dresser, eventually to be cashed when he needed the money. But it was about more than just a good wage. Ken could see that in a company of this size and stature, there was a lot of opportunity for a smart, enterprising, hard-working guy like him. As a parts delivery person, he was a low man on the totem pole then. But he knew there were many ways to move up. He was confident that a job at PCMC meant he had a secure future. A year and a half later, Ken was laid off for the first time. His wife was due to deliver their first child any day. I remember the dread I felt. I had a baby on the way and a wife who had to take unpaid leave from her job to go on bed rest because of premature labor. Our savings were pretty well depleted. How would I replace my income? How would I provide for my new child? The sense of dread and feelings of uncertainty were awful. 4 days later, his son was born. I had really strong feelings of failure and inadequacy, with some periods of depression. We had bought a house but had to sell it and lost all of our down payment money. It was really difficult. Eventually, Ken was called back to work, but other layoffs would follow. In fact, in Ken's first 6 years at PCMC, he never worked longer than 18 months at a stretch. In those days, PCMC's business was subject to wild swings. The company would receive large orders from customers, then hit a period when it had no work at all. When there was no work, the company laid off low-seniority union members like Ken, as well as engineers and office staff to cut costs. There was little predictability as to when a layoff might happen. Once, Ken found himself working overtime on a Saturday, only to learn on Tuesday that he was being laid off again. Executive jobs were never touched, and those who held them barely felt the impact of the ups and downs of the business. For people like Ken, those ups and downs often meant financial devastation. There was no way for low-seniority employees to plan for a layoff since there was little communication from the company about when one would happen and how long it might last. If Ken left PCMC, he'd give up the good wages and his chance to grow in seniority in the union. And getting hired by another company during a layoff was next to impossible, as many of the other local employers required workers to sign an agreement saying they wouldn't return to PCMC when the downturn was over. It was both a financial and an emotional roller coaster. PCMC's manufacturing director, Jerry Hickey, was experiencing his own emotional roller coaster. His natural tendency was to be a supportive and trusting leader who gave his team lots of encouragement and helped them solve their problems. But he also gave them plenty of space and freedom to do their jobs. He viewed the people he led as friends. As business pressures mounted, he was given repeated and clear directives to micromanage all activities, including what people were doing on a minute-to-minute basis. This mandate to micromanage took him back to a dark point in his career, when at an annual review his supervisor told him explicitly to be tougher on his people, stating, "You need to be a jerk to them. You need to let them know who the boss is." Part of Jerry's role was scouting locations outside the United States where the company could move their parts production facilities. His passport was peppered with stamps from countries from Mexico to Poland to China. In essence, Jerry's job was to eliminate jobs in Green Bay and take opportunities away from his friends. With every trip, Jerry felt more demoralized.